Hey everyone, so today is lesson 6, proportion word problems day 2. Now it's more of a practice day. Now, today's objective, we're starting with some review content, so solving some inequalities, making sure we don't forget how to do that, and then solving some additional questions that result in proportional relationships. So without further ado, let's get started. So our do now is 3 questions that require you to solve and graph the solution. So you're going to be doing this in your notebook and then filling in the answers to the questions that I ask you. Again, take note of how long I say you should spend on it before moving on. So, review 1, get to it. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to be a little more detailed. I'm not just going to show the work. I'm going to actually go through the explanation as well. I always, since I'm trying to isolate a variable, I think about my acronym, SADMAP. I always group the subtraction, addition, division, multiplication. Now, feel free to write a line down the middle again. I start by adding 3 to both sides. I get 7x is less than negative 21. I saw a lot of people change the less than symbol to an equal sign. Remember, we're dealing with inequalities. Don't all of a sudden change it. Divide by 7, x is less than negative 3. So here is the solution to the inequality. Let's go and graph this. As a reminder, you must put 0 somewhere. There's negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Now, because I'm less than, not less than and equal, I'm using an open circle. I think to myself, okay, less than is something to the left. And real quick, I'm just going to check it in the original. I'm going to pick the value negative 4. This is supposedly in my solution. So let's go to the original. 7 times negative 4 minus 3. That's negative 28 minus 3, which is negative 31, which is in fact less than negative 24. So my graph is correct. All right, let's go on to review number 2. Go ahead. So I rewrote the question, and as you see, I wrote those implied parentheses in. So whenever we have a fraction, we have those implied parentheses. Again, something that we've been forgetting, so that's why I put that in there as a review. I start by multiplying both sides by negative 2 to undo that, leaving me with an x plus 3 on the left side, a negative 10 on the right side. I multiplied by a negative. So it's an inequality. So my greater than or equal is now a less than or equal. I had to flip it. Subtract 3, and I get x is less than or equal to negative 13. Let's go and graph this. Here's my 0. Now, I'm not going to write 13. I'm going to go by, say, 2's. So negative 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So here's negative 14. We'll put in, negative 2, negative 4, negative 6, negative 8, negative 10, negative 12. So then all of a sudden, right here is negative 13. I'm doing a closed circle this time because it's less than or equal. And I'm again less than, so I'm going to the left. All right, last but not least, review question number 3. Solve and graph this one. Here's the solution to this one. Notice that I, right here, divided by a negative. So again, my less than flipped to be a greater than. So our answer is x is greater than negative 6. All right, now let's get to today's material. Now, in your notebook, I expect to see when you upload your notes, you define a variable for the unknown, set up the proportion to represent the situation, and then solve the proportion and write your answer as a complete sentence. So I expect to see that. Those are my requirements. Now, to make sure that the system marks you correctly, also take a look at these instructions, how to input your answers into the system. So if we have a proportion, say A over B equals C over D. So for example, here's my example, X over 100 equals 5 over 9. That's the same thing as that. So that's how you're going to input the symbols. Now use X as your variable. In the future, you can use any variable. It's just for the system, since I can't put every single option. So as you see, so we have a practice one. I tell you to spend about 6 minutes max on it, and then I will go over it afterwards. Make sure you show all work. There are different ways of setting up the proportion and still getting to the answer. So there's different ways. And so if all of a sudden I see in PlayPosit that you wrote something in that I just didn't put in as a solution, I will mark it correct if it's correct. So just because it says you're wrong doesn't mean you're wrong. I have to decide all the answers, and sometimes I don't input one of them. So practice one, give it a shot. So for this first one, I'll go into a little bit more detail, but I'm not going to do this detail in every question. So I've defined X as the number of seats empty. So if I'm setting up my proportion, I'm thinking to myself, okay, on the left side, I'm going to have my percentages. On my right side, I'm going to have my seat info. On the bottom, in the denominator, I'm going to have the 100, the total. And in the top, the part I'm looking at. So all of a sudden, I think to myself, okay, what's my total percentage? Because that's going to go right here on the left, bottom left. Well, my total percentage is 100%. I'm then going to take a look at my total seat info. Well, that's bottom right. Well, I have that information. There's 200 seats. So I'm going to say, okay, 200 is down there. Well, now all of a sudden, again, follow the color code of how I'm doing this. I'm now going to find the percent part that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the percentage that is empty, because that's how I've defined X. So my percent that is empty, according to the problem right here, 72% was empty. And then last but not least, I'm going to take a look and try to figure out my part of the seat info. Well, that's my unknown. So there we go. I set up my proportion. Now I can all of a sudden, let's rewrite this over here so we don't become too distracted by all the work. I'm going to use cross multiplication and get 100x is equal to 72 times 200, which is 14400. I'm going to then divide by 100 to isolate the variable, and I get x equals 144. So therefore, 144 seats are empty on the train. Now, we're then asked the question, how many were occupied? Well, there's two different ways of doing this. If 72% was empty, that means 28% of the seats were filled. So either you can set up a proportion, say 28 over 100 equals, we'll say y over 200, where y is seats filled. And when you solve that, you'll get the answer. Or we already know that 144 are empty. So we could say, okay, 200 total minus 144. And this all of a sudden gives us 56 seats are filled. So there are our two answers. So again, many different ways to go about getting these answers. Let's go on to practice 2. All right, so this is an actual information. Be very careful about what starts as my original, where I am then going to, and what we are looking for. All right, best of luck. So I've already set up my proportion and thought about what should be on the left, what should be on the right, what should be on the denominator, what should be on the numerator. So let's look at this, okay? So we have our percentage and our original. That's our total. Well, our percentage, that's 100%. And then we have our salamanders and our original. Well, we can look right here. It was originally 1,400. So that goes right there. Well, then we have our percentage change. Well, that's how I defined X, the percentage change. Okay, so there's X. And last but not least, we have our change in salamanders. Our change, that's how I defined it. So that means I'm doing 1,400 minus the 200 to figure out that the change was 1,200. Now, as I said, you can do this in different ways. You could have instead set up, say, this. And if you did this, this would be finding you the percentage left, which is perfectly fine. You just have to think about, in the end, does it answer the question? Okay, now we're going to solve the first case though. So we have X over 100 equals 1,200 over 1,400. I'm actually going to make my life a little easier first and just realize that those cancel out. So I'm now doing a 12 times 100 equals a 14 times X. So we get 14 times X. And then we're going to divide by 14, divide by 14. And when we do 1,200 divided by 14, we get X equals 85.71 about percent. So if you had solved this one, the one on the left, or sorry, on the right, well, you would have just gotten the opposite of this 85.71. And by opposite, I mean to get to 100. You would have gotten that Y equals 14.29. But both of these, even though they have different answers, they're saying the same thing. This is saying right here, this is saying that the population dropped by 85.71%. This is saying there is 14.29% left. So they're saying the same thing, but the question specifically asked for the change. So I want this answer, not the other one. And this happens to be a percentage decrease. All right, practice 3. Go ahead. So here's the answer to practice problem 3. The main thing that I want to draw your attention to is this right here. We must have the same unit. So we were talking about 3 days and 2 weeks. Well, 2 weeks is the same as 14 days. So that's why I didn't say 3 over 2, I said 3 over 14. All right, as a reminder, you have any questions at any point, come into the video chat to speak with me live. Otherwise, here is practice problem 4. Read it carefully, go ahead. So I solved this one in 2 different ways. Now, on the left, I said people who live near the city. On the right, I said people who don't live near the city. Well, people who live near the city is 79%. Well, that means to find the people who don't, we would just say 100 minus 79, which is 21. So 21% do live near the cities. So when I solve them both, I got X equals 252.8 million live close to cities, 67.2 million do not. but the question had asked do not. So either I solved it this way, and by solving it this way, I got the answer. If I did it the other way, I found how many live close. Well, now what I need to do is 320, the total, minus those who do live near the city, and I'm going to get 67.2, which are the people that don't. So either way would have gotten you the correct answer. All right, practice number 5. Give it a shot. Here's practice 5. And actually the way I defined it, money donated to charity, once I found X, which is 1,800, I actually got my answer. So that was practice number 5. Now, here is number 6. So again, read it carefully, think about what your original is, and what then ends up happening. Now in last class, we talked about the percent increase versus percent compared to the original. Now on the left, I just cared about the increase. If I went from 5,000 to 17,000, that means my increase was 12,000. So my final percent increase is a 240% increase. If you put the 17,000 over 5,000, well, then you got 340%, which represents the compared to the original. Well, the original is 100% to 340% means a 240% increase because we have to take away that original 100%. Either way, we get the same answer of 240% increase. All right. Now, this is going to be using this tax bracket right here. Let me make it bigger. Now, this is the actual tax bracket for Italy. So when we think about this and we see this, we're saying a person earns 52,000 euros. Well, we look here, and the way to read this, 52,000 is between 28,000 and 55,000, which means what do they have to pay in tax? 38%. So your goal is to figure out how much tax that is. So I'm paying 38% of 52,000. Go ahead. Okay, so this is how much a person who earns 52,000 in Italy has to pay in taxes, 19,760 in taxes. So as a reminder also, if all of a sudden you're making, say, 10,000, so if you're earning 10,000 and that's all you're earning, well then you're going to pay 23% because 10,000 is between 0 and 10,000. If you're making 80,000 euros, well, 80,000 is over 75,000, so it means you're paying 43%. And that's a general idea of how the taxes work. All right. Here is one for you to do as well. Now, this one is the US tax bracket. So since this person is earning 80,000, we figure out where 80,000 falls under, and that's right here. It's between those two numbers. So I'm paying 25%. All right, figure out how much they pay in tax. Go ahead. Okay, so here's the answer to practice 8. You end up paying $20,000 in income tax. All right. Now, 9 and 10, also another application question that's going to be a little different, so make sure you listen carefully. They're challenge ones, but I think you can do it. And I'm going to, through the PlayPosit, help you walk through it. Now, the VAT in Italy is the value added tax. Now, it's already built into the price. It's already built into the price. So therefore, when we're taking a look at this, it's 22% on all goods. So here's my little hint to you. If you see the new iPhone XS Max, which cost 1,689 euros, what percentage does this represent? Well, this has the 100% original cost plus the 22% VAT already built in. So this number right here, 1,689 euros, is actually equivalent to 122%. It's actually already built in. See if you can use that to set up a proportion, remembering this information. This on the top is the percentage looking for. Down here is the percentage of the original. So I'll write 100% in there because we always are looking for that 100%. All right, give it a shot. So in this case, the unknown, we don't know the original price. We don't know the actual price. And so that's going to match our 100%. Therefore, our 122% is the part we're looking for. It's weird to say we're looking for it. We have it. And what does this represent? 1689. So I now want you to try to solve this yourself. Now I solved it right down here. And notice that I rounded to 2 decimals because it's dealing with money. And so we see that the original price is 1,384 euros and 43 cents. Well, you're paying 1,689. So that other 300 euros or so, that's tax. It's already built in. So let's go on to the last challenge question. Now, this challenge question, the other day I spent $48.50 on groceries at Pam. How much did I pay in taxes? Now, remember here, when we're thinking about this, for groceries, the VAT is only 10%. So think about what percentage this $48.50 represents. Go ahead. So this $48.50, just like the previous one, was the 100% plus the 10% VAT. So it represents a total of 110%. Use that and try to set up the proportion. So again, I don't have my 100%. That's what I'm looking for. So we'll say X original bill. I know we're asked to find the taxes, but we'll get there in a second. All of a sudden, I'm given the 110%, which is $42.50. So just in case you didn't have that, now go and try to solve it. So I cross multiply. 110x is equal to 4250. I'm going to then divide 4250 by 110 on both sides. And I get x equals a 38.636. So I round up to 34 because it's 2 decimals. Now this represents my original bill, but the question asks the taxes. Okay, well, 42.50 is what I paid, minus the 38.64, which was the cost of it without the taxes. So I'm going to start for, that becomes 6, bar 1 there, 8, bar 1 there, 3. This is the tax that I paid. Okay, so they are sometimes a little challenging, but the most important thing is to figure out what percentage match up with what value. And the percentages, as we've seen, they can be under 100%, they could be larger than 100%, they could be asking for the increase or the percentage compared to something. All right, I have 1 or 2 follow-up questions before you go. Make sure you answer them and then enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, guys.